really talk about that and ask questions about that. I think there are misconceptions about it, and I think it's perhaps at times it's a word that's a little bit airy-fairy, and people might think it's something it's not. And I think we could all develop more compassion towards ourselves and obviously towards others.
Absolutely.
I think that would be a beautiful starting point.
A great point. Okay, let's do that. Okay, so let's just motivate. The Tibetans would say, set your motivation. What's your motivation for what you're going to do? We might say, what's our purpose? What's our goal, you know? So here, maybe we think, we're sitting here together. How long have we got? An hour, 90 minutes? What is it again?
We've got an hour and a half.
Okay, good. So we're going to be here for 90 minutes, unless you're bored and you want to go, and that's perfectly fine. I don't mind. But I promise I'll stay here till the end. We're going to talk about, I'm going to be using, you know, from what I know about the Buddhist approach, and I talk about in a very down-to-earth kind of way, psychologically, about the way we relate to ourselves and therefore the way we relate to others. So the way to listen to it is as advice. It's like you're reading a cookbook. It's all advice, isn't it, how to make cakes. You don't have to make the cakes, but that's how it's written. It's as advice. So think of it like this, and think it's advice for two things, and this is very appropriate for tonight. You know, there's two wings of the bird. I always mention it. We've got the wisdom wing and the compassion wing. Well, the compassion wing is the point in the end, to be of use to this planet, you know. But if you can't be of use to yourself, you can't see past your own nose, you can't even help a fly. So the wisdom wing is sort of the job you do on your own mind, and we'll discuss that in relation to compassion. So we're going to take tools from this advice, if we can, to help develop our own amazing potential, so that we can be of help to others. Thinking like that. And I'm going to sing a little Tibetan kind of prayer that expresses that concept. Sangye charang soke chognam la jangcho baru dagni kyab suchi dagi chönyen gi personam ki drola penchir sangye drupa shok. Sangye charang soke chognam la jangcho baru dagni kyab suchi dagi chönyen gi personam ki drola penchir sangye drupa shok. Sangye charang soke chognam la jangcho baru dagni kyab suchi dagi chönyen gi personam ki drola penchir sangye dropa shok. Okay. So this analogy is really great. I love it, actually. It's so down to earth that there's just two wings of the bird, you know, wisdom and compassion. So like I said, you know, you could say the compassion wing is the point. But I remember the Dalai Lama, he always says compassion's not enough. You've got to have wisdom. So what that means is, it sounds a bit grand, wisdom, you know. You think, what's wisdom? It really is wisdom, the way Buddhist analysis of our mind goes, the more we're caught up in our own misery and unhappiness and depression and anxiety and despair and, joy in the universe, we all experience this, it's obvious, isn't it? Is one, the extent to which we're caught up in the misery, is one, the extent to which we're so disconnected from ourselves, but two, completely disconnected from others, you know. So if the main point is compassion, and a lot of people love that idea, but somehow if we don't do the work on ourselves, then we're going to make a mess and we'll end up being used like a doormat, you know, because our compassion is all mucky. It's got to be wise compassion. It's got to be compassion that's kind of got strength and clarity. And that's what the wisdom means. It's something practical, you know. So first of all, this one of compassion to ourselves. The Buddhists mightn't say it like that, but that's really the wisdom wing. And that comes, you know, and it's not an easy one. We love to be, I mean, my mother used to say to me when I was in all my agonies and dramas and weeping and suffering, you know, she'd say, "You're your own worst enemy, Bobsy." She called me Bobsy. You're your own worst enemy. And it's not wrong. We really are. And we can see this. Forget about yourself, but look at other people you know who are totally miserable. This is never to be critical. We should have compassion for each other, who are caught up in their own misery, who are depressed. I'm not being negative. Don't hear it that way. This is, in the Buddhist view, this is not meant to be in a punitive, negative, moralistic way. The Buddhist analysis is very simple and says that we suffer because of our own anger, our own despair, our own depression, our own jealousy. And if we can see that in other people, you really can see. And in the end, it's exhausting being around people like that because they're so overwhelmingly miserable. It's not being negative. But when we can see this in ourselves, and then learn to know ourselves well, and that's the approach here, the wisdom wing, is having this kind of integrity to know your own mind well, to really know yourself well, to understand it, to be responsible for the unhappy stuff, but then also especially for the good stuff. But the irony is of ego, the irony of ego, is we don't think about the good stuff. We don't even notice the good stuff. We all know that the negative voices loom large in our head, and the tragedy is we believe they're true. It's like all these roommates saying mean, ugly words about ourselves, and the tragedy is we believe them. We believe I'm a creep, I'm no good, there is no hope, I'm hopeless, despair, blah, 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 blah. This is the terrible irony of what Buddhism would call ego. Ego isn't some big, strong thing. It's actually the sense of separateness, the sense of loneliness, the sense of lacking something. This is so natural in all of us. So I find it really helpful, and this just happens to be the Buddhist approach, the way they talk about the potential of our mind. I mean, they talk even about how the mind is naturally pure. And that's a weird concept. If you go to a neuroscientist and say that is my mind naturally pure, they'll be very confused because they're talking about the brain, and basically the brain is a bunch of caca, it'll just turn into dust when you die. So what do you mean pure? We don't talk like that in our culture. But this is very much the Buddhist approach. And I find this very compelling, and because I have confidence in it, I'm taking this as my working hypothesis, that the positive qualities within us, the kindness, the virtue, the goodness, the ethics, the wish not to harm, not to lie, not to steal. These are profound, but we don't talk about ethics in psychology, do we, But ethics is really powerful. If you've got a natural wish to be of benefit to the world, if you've got a natural wish to be a better person, if you've got a natural wish not to lie or steal or kill or rape, you're a pretty amazing human being. But we don't notice that. We only notice the rubbish. We only notice the lack within us. This is so ironic. This is the irony of ego is that. So you could argue that a person, using again the Buddhist analysis, who is a very developed person, is a person who's less attached, less angry, less despairing, less jealous, less depressed, and therefore what? More happy, for goodness sake, more joyful, more stable, and more compassionate. It's so clear, It's natural if you're overwhelmed with yourself. And that you can still see a person can be very depressed, but also very compassionate. You can see that. And this is also another discussion. We can be depressed because we think we're miserable, but we can also be depressed because we think the world is a terrible place, and it doesn't look like there's anything we can do to help. And that's the compassion wing aspect. That's why, to have the compassion to get out there and be of benefit to the universe and never give up, to have confidence and optimism that there's always something we can do, you've got to have some sense of stability in yourself, some recognition of your own potential. And then when you can see your potential, human potential, meaning the potential for happiness, the potential for kindness, the potential for goodness, the potential for ethics, then you can see it in others. No matter how bad things get, you will not give up. You'll stay perky and optimistic. But you've got to do the inner work first. There's no shortcut. You can't not do it. And that's what compassion for yourself ends up being, But the terrible tragedy, as I'm saying, of irony, the irony of ego, when we hear about we've got anger, we've got jealousy, we've got depression, we just go, oh my God, I'm worse than I thought, And the Buddhist approach, of course, is it's okay, it's our approach is, yes, I'm angry, yes, I am jealous, and yes, I am depressed, but look at why, and it's always out there somewhere. So the Buddhist one is, yes, the world is a horrible place sometimes. Yes, the world is really terrible. People do terrible things to us. But if we can have the courage to look directly in here. That sounds very puzzling to us sometimes. But that just means, learning to listen to all these conceptual stories that are running deep in our bones, that are what inform all our emotions. Then we can really begin to own what's there, and not out of guilt, not out of shame, not out of I'm a bad person, but being happy to see the problems because you can fix them. Because this approach that we've all got this amazing potential to be happy and clear and wise and not jealous and not angry. It sounds kind of idealistic, but in this approach here, it's logical. We've got to see the logic of it, and then that will give us confidence. In other words, you might be 20 kilos overweight and feel in bad health, really sick, miserable, but there is a method. There are methods to go to the gym and go on diets and go on nutritional plans. There are methods out there to turn your body into something healthy. We're talking the mind here. But our tragedy is in our culture, because we so concretize the physical, the body, and we so concretize the outside that we feel completely paralyzed, like there's no hope, But everything changes. Everything is in the nature of change. So it takes courage to see this. It takes courage, doing the inner work, like a friend of mine who's a therapist, also happens to be a Buddhist, she says it's having your hands in your own shit. And we know it's not comfortable, it's not comfortable. But the owning of what's inside ourselves, the unhappy stuff, actually we can really do that well when we can learn to own the good stuff. But this is the I often joke, and it's true, I've never yet met a person who says, Robina, I can't stop thinking good thoughts. We don't talk like that. Always, there's always a sense that we're not enough, always a sense that we're not good enough, or we're not thin enough, or not nice enough, or not the right shape, or it's sort of, that's the irony of ego, it's kind of fascinating. I mean, you think of people who are totally divine, who think it would be perfect. The world thinks they're divine, I remember reading about Audrey Hepburn. I remember reading about Marilyn Monroe, I mean, there's Audrey Hepburn, was a sweet lady and didn't seem to be so depressed and neurotic as dear Marilyn, have such self-loathing as Marilyn seemed to have. So the irony, isn't it? The whole world worshipped the ground she walks on, but she completely thought she was a creep, so ironic. But even Audrey Hepburn, this gorgeous, elegant person, sweet and kind and compassionate, who helped others all her life, she would joke about how her nose wasn't right and her hair wasn't right and her feet weren't right, and she'd shown she had this and had more breasts, and everybody thinks this way. It's kind of ironic, We all know that someone can come up to you and think you're totally gorgeous and praise you for all your good qualities, and you literally can't see them. So this one of being compassionate to ourselves is so logical. And it takes courage. We seem addicted to seeing the misery. 27 people, I've said this before many times, and it's so clear. 27 people can say, Robina, you're really nice, you've got good qualities, you do this, you do that, and you hear it, and you're hungry to hear it. But we don't believe it. One person points out my mistakes, and guess what I believe? That one. That's utter proof, That's complete proof that we emphasize more our neurotic aspects than our positive ones. And it's kind of like just ridiculous. It's just bizarre. But knowing we do this, observing it, and then what's the next step though? The next step is to think, okay, I'm going to listen to these crazy stories in my head, because they're all conceptual stories. They're words that are deep in our bones that then manifest as feelings. We've got to go beneath the feelings to the conceptual stories, to the scripts that our mind is writing. We've got to have the courage to actually, it sounds almost too simple, to think, well, okay, there are some thoughts in my mind that say I'm a creep. There are some thoughts in my mind that say everything is hopeless. But then we've got to say, well, I wonder, perhaps I should question these thoughts. Perhaps they're not true. This is the point that's so fascinating. And this is the point that's so tragic. We all have these unhappy thoughts. But it never occurs to us to question whether they're valid. This is quite astonishing to think. You think we're intelligent. I mean, it's like if you think that 1 + 1 is 3, and someone points out your mistake, you'll quickly change. But if someone, but you keep saying I'm no good, and someone points out that it's not quite true, Robina, you may be okay, why don't we believe it? We've got to look at this. So don't worry about why we don't believe it. How about starting to question, are those thoughts that I have about myself, are they valid? But it's kind of fascinating that it doesn't occur to us. Well, maybe that's a first step. And this is stupendous if we can do it, So in other words, there's this terrible disconnect between what we think of ourselves and who we actually are. And it's quite difficult to get the sense of who we are, I mean, especially if you're an actor. I remember, what's that fellow, I always quote him, what's that Australian fellow who died from an overdose? He played the Joker and everything. What was his name?
Heath Ledger.
What's his first name?
Heath Ledger.
Heath, that's right, exactly. Heath, I remember reading about him, and this is very typical. Suddenly, you'll understand this, suddenly you become famous. Everybody adores you. They put you on a pedestal. Now, we know that that's exaggerating. We know that. And it's exactly, listen to this, it's exactly the same as when you hate a person. You exaggerate their ugliness. So we either exaggerate someone's perfection or we exaggerate their ugliness. So we kind of know that. So in both cases, so if Heath, let's say, I mean, I don't know where he was at, but I remember him agonizing about this. That there he was with a powerful reputation, people praising him as an actor, so on and so forth, which of course is what his goal was. But then suddenly you struggle with it. And then often the common thing that I hear people say, like actors, is that you kind of, because you have this low self-esteem, Because we don't think we're enough, because we don't think we are as good as people say we are, we feel like someone's going to catch us. This is the commonest one. Someone's going to find out that we're actually a fraud. Audrey Hepburn said that. That's really common. So what I'm getting at here is, this is the way the Buddhist analysis is. This irony of ego is that we think we emphasize more the bad things. Now, you could think of a person who's very arrogant, and you could argue, well, they don't exaggerate their bad, they exaggerate their good. Listen to this. That's called arrogance. Well, guess what the flip side of arrogance is? Low self-esteem. You insult a person who's arrogant, they will collapse and then have self-loathing. So the irony of this is, and this feels very embarrassing to admit it, that if we've got low self-esteem, it means we've got arrogance and pride, but we're always on the flip side of it. Whereas if we had confidence in ourselves, self-confidence, you know what? We'd also be humble. And I remember, I'll never forget using Audrey Hepburn as an example, but using another person as an example. I remember years ago, long time ago, on the television, watching an interview with famous people. And again, the same kind of deal, famous people. One was, that Australian cricketer in the 1930s, Donald Bradman. The other one was Dame Margot Fontaine. Okay, well, I was born in 1944, so I know all about her. She's dead now. She's a famous, super famous ballet dancer. What was so fascinating in this interview, that was before I was a Buddhist, but I really noticed it. There they are, the top in their profession. You couldn't get more top than they were. But they were humble, unassuming, easygoing, and you know what? They had self-confidence. So that's the irony of self-confidence. The Buddhist approach is, in this particular way, the Buddhist analysis of the mind is quite distinct to Buddhism, and I've discussed it before. We can divide all of our millions of states of mind into two categories: the neurotic, unhappy, I-based, fear-based feelings, anger, attachment, jealousy, low self-esteem, blah, 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 and the positive ones. This sounds a bit it sounds a bit sort of moralistic to you, good and bad, but listen to me. You've got love, compassion, self-confidence, joy, happiness, kindness, forgiveness, compassion. We know these. So a person, these two people, it was so clear to me, the top in their field, but they were, as we'd say in the West, comfortable in their own skin. They were their own person, put it like that. They were easygoing, they were relaxed. They in other words, to be the best at who you are, but to be humble, that's a pretty powerful combination, meaning they always thanked other people. They recognized that their fame was because of not just themselves, but the work of other people, the kindness of other people, blah, 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 But, so that's positive states of mind, and they are in their nature comfortable. So self-confidence is comfortable. Low self-esteem is totally uncomfortable. So the neurotic states of mind are really miserable. There's always a sense of separateness, always a sense of loneliness, bereft, not enough, lots of emotional hunger. We're all over the place, up and down like yo-yos. They're the negative neurotic ones, and we've all got them. But we've got the positive ones too. So I kind of joke and talk of all our thousands of roommates, and the loudest roommates in our head we know are the negative ones. They're all shouting and yelling. They loom large in our head. So they're the ones we pay attention to. But what about the good roommates? I always think of them, they're hiding in the wardrobe, hiding under the bed. Well, you've got to start proactively bringing out the good roommates. Don't just because the negative ones come naturally. That means you've got to actively look at the good ones and look at our good qualities and be very logical and argue with the crazies. I'm not kidding. This is being your own therapist, as one of my teachers puts it. We've got to be proactively involved in developing and cultivating positive thoughts. That sounds almost hilarious to us. What do you mean developing positive thoughts about myself? You've got to have them. You've got to say, well, I'm doing a pretty good job, Robina. I am doing okay. Maybe it's not as bad as I think. You've got to do this. You can't just wait for other people to praise you. We've got to do it ourselves. But this is the point, I know with Heath Ledger, people say he's an amazing actor. He's got his own lack of self-confidence, like everybody has. He kind of wants to be seen as good, but when he is seen as good, he's embarrassed. So we've become kind of schizophrenic, So this is where, if you are a good actor, let's say an actor or whatever it is you do, and someone praises you, be delighted, thank them. Know maybe that they're exaggerating your good qualities, but that's their business. Don't buy into the rubbish. Don't get arrogant. Don't start patting yourself, but be happy that someone praises you. So in a relationship, this is where a relationship can be so nourishing. When we've got this low self-esteem and this emotional hunger, and you're in this relationship and a person adores you, You want them to adore you. You want them to love you and praise you. But then because you've got low self-esteem, when they do say they love you, part of you doesn't agree with it and doesn't believe it. This is the tragedy, you know. So let them say they love you, but use it to nourish your own heart. Don't sort of spit it back at them and say, oh no, I'm not really worthy. We've got to catch ourselves all the time. We've got to be conscious, you know. That's why even just starting the day with a simple 5-minute concentration meditation technique, it's not religion, it's practical psychology. Because what you're learning to do is like a training in the morning. You start your day and you kind of watch your boring old breath for 3 minutes. 3 quality minutes, I tell you. So what you're doing is you're training yourself to stay on one thing. You're training yourself to focus. So you're not trying to make the thoughts go away. That's silly. But you're not going to follow the thoughts, which is what we tend to do mindlessly, but you're becoming more conscious. You watch your boring old breath for a few minutes, you start to hear all the crazy thoughts, but you let them be there. You let them come, you let them go. So you bring this training to bear once you open your eyes and you start washing the dishes and dealing with your boyfriend and driving the car. Instead of just being immersed in the external, you start to notice what's happening in your crazy thoughts. But you kind of welcome your thoughts, not be scared of them. Because being scared of something just makes it all worse. You can't make them go away. We've got to own what's there, but knowing it's not set in stone. Knowing that your true nature, and this is Buddhist words, and you've got to get confidence in this, is your goodness, your virtue, your wisdom, your clarity, your kindness. So the job is sort of like you've got to consciously work on the rubbish, own them for what they are, don't believe them so strongly, either about other people or yourself, because they're always exaggerating, and then learn to cultivate positive thoughts. I mean, it sounds a bit almost like Pollyanna, having positive thoughts about yourself, for God's sake. But we have to do this. We have to do this. You've got to train those parts of our mind, you know, and then start having confidence that this is who I am. So it's like, as one of my teachers says, you learn to mold your mind into any shape you like. We know we can do this when you're acting. You know you can play any role at all. You train your mind. Well, we can train ourselves to become the person we want to become. It's just the same, I swear to you. So I want you to ask me some questions, you people. That's 25 minutes. And because I talk 3 times the pace of others, it's now 75 minutes. I'm not joking. We tested it one time. So come on, talk to me. Ask some questions.
Have I got anybody who's got a question? Michael, can you see anybody on this screen who has a question? Just unmute yourself if you have one.
If not, I can chat away, don't worry. There
no
might
questions
be.
at this point?
I'll just blow my nose, you can have a think, if there's any questions.
All right. This is from Quintus.
Good, Quintus. Talk to me, sweetheart.
Hey, Robina.
Yes.
Great. So when you were talking about the self-confidence and cultivating the humbleness.
Yeah. But how they go together.
Smart.
That's self-confidence and humility go together. Arrogance and low self-esteem go together. It's kind of interesting. Go on.
Yeah. I have a question because I have a naturally big personality.
You say what again? You have what? Sorry?
I have a naturally big personality.
You mean you shout and yell like I do, yeah?
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
joking.
And I share a lot of opinions, and I think partly because I did have struggled a lot with negative self-talk for a long time.
Yeah.
I'm quite openly positive about myself with others, and I'm just I'm wondering what the line is there, because I am big, but I don't want to be arrogant.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. So I was hoping for just a little bit more definition
Exactly,
about that.
exactly. The key to this, what did you say your name was? Sorry?
Quintus.
Quintus. Okay, Quintus, listen. This is the job to be done, and this is it's a fine line, but it's a massive line. And it can only come with really learning to listen to what the name of Jesus, God in heaven, is going on in our heads. Forgive me, I love Jesus. We've got to learn to become conscious. And because 99% of most of the time in our lives, we're not conscious. I mean, the Buddhist approach is we come pretty programmed already, not with mummies and daddies stuff, but with our own stuff. And so it's much of what we are is pretty instinctive, you know. If we're arrogant or angry, it's kind of instinctive. If we're humble and cautious, it's instinctive. So it takes time to really get beneath the surface, you know. And we can't do it overnight. So it's like, the crucial point to give us the clue to exactly your question, to how to answer it, is this key point that I mentioned already in Buddhist psychology, that is not the way we think in modern psychology, is that there is this total, clear, profound distinction between the neurotic, deluded, I-based, fear-based, ego-based states of mind. For example, attachment, anger, arrogance, you know, blah, 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 those ones. And there's this fundamental difference between them and the so-called positive ones: self-confidence, humility, compassion, kindness. So if we say ego in the West, we usually mean kind of loud, you know, confident, bossy. And if we think of humble, we think of a little quiet little person. So they're kind of cliches, you know. So the difference, so let me just give an example. So then let's look at the difference between what we would call humility and what we call low self-esteem, okay? So when I looked at, and we can see it if I point this out, when I watched that video, Margot Fontaine and what's his name, the other fellow, the cricketer, it was clear they were relaxed. They were easygoing. They praised other people. They were funny and easygoing. So you can immediately, a person who's easygoing and who praises other people, you can say with certainty that person is not arrogant. You can say that. I mean, there's just a feeling about it, you know. Their words were kind and they acknowledged that they were the best, but they didn't go on about it. They weren't sort of puffed up, you know. I mean, you know yourself, if you meet a person who's all puffed up, this is kind of the interesting one. The relationship between humility, which is a positive quality, it's linked to self-confidence. And then you look at the difference between arrogance and self-confidence. So sorry, I'm confused. Humility is a positive one. It's easygoing, it's relaxed, you delight in other people's qualities, you can be a very powerful person. I mean, the Dalai Lama is super powerful, super charismatic, but anybody who's been around him, you just know he's unbelievably humble, but he's powerful, he's charismatic, he's loud. So to be powerful and charismatic and to be humble, that seems contradictory to us. We would think, oh, that's an arrogant person. So the characteristic I'm getting at again is of the negative ones, the unhappy ones. They are uncomfortable, distressing. You're not comfortable. You're self-conscious in a neurotic way. If you're arrogant, or if even you've got low self-esteem. But if you're humble, you're easygoing, you're relaxed, you admire other people, you're not threatened by other people, but you're also self-confident. I mean, are you getting a sense of what I'm saying?
Yeah, I am. I think, especially when you were saying about the clear distinction, I think I've got a jumble of thoughts.
Yeah, sure. That's how we are.
At the same time.
Yes.
And I think because there is a confidence, but there's also a doubt that I feel when I'm big. So
I understand that. Exactly. I understand that.
Yeah.
So then that's where it just takes time, you know, to observe our own selves. That's why it's like training in the beginning of the day to have some kind of practice, so that you train yourself in a practical skill that gives you the ability in your daily life, when you're immersed in life and dealing with other people, to not just be conscious of the other people, but to be conscious of what's happening in our mind. That's what takes time. You see, if we understand also in the Buddhist analysis, again, we've talked about this, the deepest attachment, the way they talk about attachment is like this emotional hunger. And one of the deepest expressions of this attachment, more primordial than for sex, drugs, rock and roll and money and everything else, it's this hunger we have. This is coming from this is an aspect of low self-esteem, and it's the aspect of ego, the way Buddhism talks. It's coming from a sense of separateness. We have this emotional hunger, this need to be approved of, liked, and praised by others. So this is utterly instinctive. So even if we're fairly confident, we're still when with others, unconsciously we're watching like a hawk. The moment a person shows some dislike of us, the moment a person doesn't respond the way that we want, we start to have a panic attack. And this is very deep inside all of us. It's very deep inside all of us. This is all a function of the way the ego works. Are you communicating with me?
Yes. I mean, I'm not just trying to say anything to you, but...
What, darling? What did you say?
I mean, I am understanding, but
good, that's
I
enough.
wasn't
It's enough. It's enough. Don't worry. Don't worry. So the key, a simple, I mean, this seems almost silly, but a sign that it's neurotic, the bigness in you, is if you feel uncomfortable and a bit stressed. And if you're connected with others, that's always the key of when it's positive. When there's a sense of connectedness and affection for others and a closeness to others, a sense of interdependence with others, that's when it's positive. Because when it's ego, we're always isolated and fearful. It's very subtle, all this stuff, you know. The positive qualities make us feel good, and the unhappy ones make us feel miserable. But we've got to catch that. This is slowly. You with me?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Keep moving. That's all I can say is keep moving. It's an ongoing process.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you so very much. What else, people? Anything else?
Anybody else?
Yep, we've got
Good, Brenda. Talk to me.
So actually, it's from my there's three of us here, but we haven't got the camera enough to get us all in the view. So I'll just turn my camera around to Rosemary.
Okay, good. Hi, Rosemary. Hi, sweetheart.
Hi.
Hello there.
Dina.
Good.
The opportunity to ask a question.
Good.
I'm not sure that I understood you completely clearly before when you said there is arrogance versus low self-esteem. What I wonder is when I see arrogance, either in myself or in other people, in many cases I feel it's the opposite of confidence. It's actually a mask.
That's right.
That belongs to low self-esteem.
Exactly. No, exactly. That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. When you've got humility, which is a positive quality, you're easygoing and relaxed and connected. That's when you've got self-confidence. You're connected. You're content in who you are, so you can afford to be generous with other people because you're content. They're the positive kind of opposites. You understand? So the same here. When you're arrogant, and I know this because arrogance is, I'm familiar with it. When I was since a little kid, arrogance is kind of this kind of show, but it's when someone insulted me, it would collapse and become low self-esteem.
Yeah,
that's what I'm saying. So they're both. So in other words, if I'd had in my life, if I had not had arrogance, I would never have low self-esteem. In other words, this is also for the other point we were saying before. One of the key characteristics in the Buddhist analysis of the neurotic states of mind is they always exaggerate. So attachment exaggerates the deliciousness of the boyfriend. Anger exaggerates the ugliness of the ex-boyfriend. So low self-esteem exaggerates our own misery, our own rubbish, but arrogance exaggerates our goodness. So there's always an exaggeration, but the positive qualities are comfortable. So if I didn't have arrogance, I could never have low self-esteem. And if I've got humility, which is comfortable, I'm comfortable in my own skin, which means I can afford to praise other people because I'm not threatened by it. That means I'm self-confident. It's kind of interesting. But you're on the track. I agree with you.
Thank you.
All right. What else, people?
We've got three people. We've got Fran, Sandra, but Ishka, I think, is first up.
Okay, good. Go for it.
Yeah.
Hi, Robina.
Hello.
I was wondering, something I think everyone can relate to, and I know I can relate to, is feeling the need to prove yourself, and particularly when you can see other people succeeding, proving themselves, and your little ego pops up and says, oh, hi, time to prove yourself. How do you, and when you can recognize that that's ego, and what do you do to work around that, to acknowledge it and go, all right, I hear that little voice. how do I move away from that?
Well, but
And
it's really like Buddha's like a cognitive therapist. If you can hear, if you could articulate that feeling as words, because that's where it starts, subtly, if you can hear the words, then you argue with them. You just simply counteract them. Get your good roommate coming out from under the wardrobe, in the wardrobe, and you argue with that story. So like, say again, give a simple example again of the scenario. Give me an example.
oh gosh,
I guess sort of said it already. So just speak out what you just said before. Say it more precisely.
Let's say sorry.
Go on, speak.
In an acting class,
Yep.
and let's say we have a star masterclass with an amazing teacher,
Yep.
and everyone is like putting forward like their great work
Yes.
and their experiences and whatnot, and you feel like you have to, and you're not worthy unless you contribute, but you don't necessarily feel like contributing in that moment, let's say.
Yes.
What would you tell yourself in a moment like that?
You see, there's all this
where
that
you
comes down,
feel that
honey.
voice?
Exactly. All this one comes down to this deepest hunger in us, which is the deepest level of attachment, which is the Buddhist view of what really does cause us so much pain, which is causing us to be separate from others, is this assumption that I'm not good enough until someone tells me I am good. So that's the one that's really deep inside. So so if I'm sitting there hungry to show myself, needing approval, that's really uncomfortable. We all know that. But then at the same time, I'm speaking something slightly different here. If you're in a masterclass, I don't know whatever you do in a masterclass, but I can imagine, and you've got to do your thing. So you go out there with incredible confidence, prepared to make a mistake. When you're self-confident, you're not being cautious. You're prepared to be seen to be silly. There's no barrier. So you want to do the best. You want to be praised, but then when the praise does come, instead of feeling kind of all twisted about it, you delight in it and use it as nourishment to grow your ability to be the best actor. Now, if another person is better than you, another person is getting all the praise, if we've got low self-esteem, there'll be the jealousy, there'll be the resentment. So then the best antidote to that is to be delighted for the other person, to genuinely rejoice. I'm so happy for them, I'm just saying some other things here. Are you understanding what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So we've got the key to all of this is awareness of what the hell is going on in our mind. And our tragedy is, since we're born until now, unless we're really trained in this, we don't tend to look into who we are and what we are. We take ourselves as a given. We take ourselves for granted. But this is the thing that I'm not trying to be. I am praising Buddha. Buddha's this amazing dude. As the Dalai Lama said, it was these Indians more than 3,000 years ago who were the ones who began the investigation into the nature of self. And where did they look? They didn't look into the brain. They looked into the internal cognitive process itself. They're the geniuses at this. And this is something that now we're learning in our culture. This brilliant, clear skills of how to be super, super, super aware at an ever more subtle level every day of this cognitive process inside us, these endless conceptual stories, It's just a really brilliant skill. Don't call it religion. It's just practical psychology. So the more, like in any skill you have, whether it's acting or cooking cakes, the more you know it, the more precise you can be. It's the same here. This is a real skill we have to learn to do, And the basis of it, like I'm saying in Buddhist psychology, is this distinction between the unhappy, neurotic, I-based, fear-based stories and the positive, optimistic, connected to others, optimistic, good stories. It's quite an interesting concept. It sounds like moralistic in modern psychology, but it's absolutely not like that. It's really interesting, Anyway, I hope that's helpful. What else? Fran, Sandra, Amanda. Who's next?
Fran?
Hello.
When you're working on your compassion and your wisdom for yourself, and you can see that someone in your life is struggling, and there's a part of you that wants to help them, but there's also a part that feels like you can't help them, the help that you'll give them won't be enough.
I understand.
How do you find a balance between helping them
Yep.
and care of yourself.
I understand, darling. I understand. Again, the key to this is this. You know, it's a bit like a simple analogy. There's a simple analogy like with nutrition. Let's say you're eat lousy food, you're overweight, you're sick, but you're unconscious of it. You have no idea about nutrition. You have no methods. Then you can't help you. If you can't help yourself, and you look at somebody else who's similar to you, then you can't help them, sweetheart. So it's exactly the same here. This is the wisdom wing. If you don't know your mind well, if you don't know your attachment and your neediness and your emotional hunger and your anger and your despair and your worries, you cannot help somebody else. Because and why is a very good reason. You can be really compassionate. Let's just use a simple example. Let's say you've got an alcoholic brother. I'm just using a simple example. And you adore your brother. That means you love your brother. Now, in the Buddhist analysis, love is a positive quality that's connected to others, that wants them to be happy, that's spacious, that's positive. Then you've got attachment, which is this hunger in you, and the attachment is this junky in us that only can cope with the nice things. It only can bear the nice things. So if your love is mixed with attachment, your neediness for everything to be lovely, you'll stick your nose in where it doesn't belong, you'll boss your brother around, you'll talk about him behind his back, and you'll think, but you're not going to be able to much help to him. Whereas if you're more confident in yourself and you've worked on your own mind and you see his problems, and then you're going to have the wisdom to know that he's not ready for your advice. He doesn't want your advice. So you won't stick your nose in. So you'll still love your brother for who he is. You won't always define him as an alcoholic because you're much more spacious. You'll have real compassion, but you know there's nothing much you can do to help him. And that's not uncommon on this planet. So when our love and attachment, love and compassion are mixed with our own neediness for things to be nice, that's when we make a mess. I don't know, does that but on the other hand, and that's what drags us down. So if you rush in to help your brother and you keep helping him and he falls off the wagon again and you keep helping him, then you're going to drag yourself down too, because your help is not coming solely from compassion. It's coming from kind of idiot compassion, which is compassion mixed with your own dramas, your own anxiety, your own attachment. Are we communicating at all?
Yeah, I have a follow-up question, which is the difference between wanting everything to be nice.
Yep.
And often, because it is that situation.
Yep.
But sister, but then genuinely wanting her to be happy.
Yes. Okay. You absolutely. Wanting someone to be happy, that's labeled love in Buddhism. It's defined as may you be happy, a delight in someone's happiness. And the one of, what can I do to make her happy? That you must have no matter what. But honey, that is not what makes you capable of making her happy, because it's like a tennis match. She's got to be part of it. She's got to want to be helped. If your sister or your brother, whoever it might be, is so overwhelmed by their own misery, no matter what you do, that it's like water off a duck's back. No matter how much you try to make her happy, if she's not able to be nourished by your love and not able to use that to help herself use your help, then you will get exhausted and drained, and you drag yourself to despair. Because the trouble is, we determine our success at helping somebody if they get helped. But what if they never get helped? What if they just don't care? Then you'll feel like you've failed. And that's a really big mistake, because it's a two-way thing. The other person has to want to be helped and has to genuinely want to look at themselves. So you can only help as much as you can, but they've got to do their part of it. It's a two-way thing. Are you with me? Are you understanding me?
Yeah.
And there's only so much we can do. So compassion is the wish to help, but that's not what gives you the ability to help. That's your own wisdom, and you have that when you've worked on your own mind and you've got a clarity about who they are, separate from you, and you don't get it all mixed up. And this takes skill, honey. And then the point is, they might never be helped. They might continue to be an alcoholic until they die. That doesn't mean you didn't try and you never stop loving that person. But another point is interesting. It's a really big one. when we're miserable about ourselves, what we're doing is over-exaggerating our bad qualities. They loom large in our head and they prevent us from seeing our good qualities, which means we always define ourselves. I'm bad, I'm depressed, I'm no good, I'm fat, I'm bad, whatever it might be. We over-exaggerate our bad, which blinds us from seeing our good. Now, exactly the same with your alcoholic brother, using the example. All we do is define him as an alcoholic. But you know your brother. You've known him since he's a little boy. You know his good qualities. They're also still there. So if we over-exaggerate our own rubbish, then we've over-exaggerated somebody else's rubbish, and we always define him as the alcoholic and talk about him behind his back and then blame him when he comes home and vomits in the soup and makes mummy unhappy. We kind of get all neurotically involved in it, and we exaggerate that. He's got other qualities as well. So stop talking to the alcoholic in him. Talk to the better part of your brother. Lift him up by the way you respond to him. That's also how we should be with ourselves, darling. Are you with me?
Yeah, I am.
Good. I know myself since a little girl. We all have to do this with each other. From a big family, 7 kids, and I'm volatile. And I could talk about big. I'm big too. Big, loud voice, noisy, angry, arrogant, and all those qualities. So of course I was angry easily when things went wrong. So, of course, everybody would respond to me as angry. Robina's angry. So, of course, because little Robina wanted to be praised and wasn't getting praised, so then what do I do but over-exaggerate my own anger and define myself as an angry person? We all do that. It's interesting, in Tibetan way of working on your mind, they say anger does this, and jealousy says this, and attachment is that. We go, I am angry, I am attached, I am jealous. We emphasize this I too much. So then I exaggerated my own anger, and so did other people. So I defined myself in that way. But the anger is there, but it's not the only thing. So the alcoholic brother, that's there, but it's not the only thing. So when we have a reasonable picture of ourselves, a more balanced picture, a compassionate picture, a reasonable picture where we can praise ourselves for our good qualities, but then own the rubbish ones, then we can do the same for others. It's more balanced, it's more reasonable, and we'll be more wise and skillful in our efforts to help others. You with me?
Yes, I am.
And honey,
Thank
this
you.
follows exactly for helping the world. We want to get out there and, be a political activist and help the world and help whatever. I mean, what happens exactly the same. We despair when we see that nothing much changes. But this is, so I know when I was an old radical lefty in the 60s, out there demonstrating, getting arrested, trying to change the world, make it a better place, blah, blah, blah. And of course, you have this idealism, oh, wow, the world is changing. But you realize, there I was in the 70s working with, in England, working with a black group, black California prisoners, the Black Panthers. I was in a support group. And here it is 50 years, 60 years later, however many years it is, exactly the same, and nothing much has changed in a way. So you can easily get depressed about that. But when you're more realistic, that change takes time, then you'll be more humble and just do what you can one step at a time and not give up. The same with helping your friends, the same with helping the world, not all extreme. And that's why, for example, I remember Martin Luther King. He said, it's good to be angry, meaning it's good to see there's problems. Look at the racism, look at the poverty, look at the suffering. But then you say, what can I do to help? That's compassion. And then you won't give up. The Dalai Lama one time in an interview, the fellow said, well, anger looks like it's really productive. And Dalai Lama said, I know what you mean. But if it's coming from anger, and the way Buddhism describes anger is one of those, it's like the response when attachment doesn't get what it wants. It's like a panic attack, freaked out. Because attachment can't stand problems. And so when it's that, it becomes very destructive. But if it's positive analysis, look at the suffering, look at the racism, and if you're then based on compassion, then he says you'll never give up. So the same with helping one person or the whole world. You become more realistic, and you become more steady, you become more optimistic, and then you help one person at a time. You don't have these fantasies of changing the whole world all at once, because you can't. It's ridiculous. Are we communicating?
Yes.
Good, Tom. What else, people?
All right. I think, is there a question from Sandra?
Yeah,
Good, darling. Talk to me.
yeah. I met you in Massachusetts.
Yeah, okay, good.
You remember me?
Where we meet? In Massachusetts?
Gongmatrijan.
Where?
It's only Gongmatrijan.
Okay.
It's only, you remember?
Oh, yes, I do now. Yeah, I do, Sandra. Yes. Good, darling. I'm
Yeah.
happy to see you.
Yes, I used to sit in on Annie Leanne McNeil years ago.
Oh, amazing. Did you really? Oh, my God.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Anyhow, yeah. I love what you're saying, and I'm in an age group a little younger than you, and to even begin to do this with the screw ups that we had to grow up with, and
Sure.
the reinforcement of screw ups constantly.
Yeah.
I need to move into this direction for this last part of my life, and
Good,
I don't
Sandra.
even know where to start.
Yes.
I know what you're saying, but it's just so indentured in everybody.
That's right.
In the workplace and
Yes.
everywhere. So
Yes.
I don't know where to start.
Exactly, darling. But keep moving, girl. With no choice. Keep moving, honey, until you drop off this perch, okay?
Well, I have been telling people kind of what I think,
Yeah.
but getting into a bit of anger because I'm just so sick of what I'm seeing.
No, I know, darling. We've got to just keep persevering, though. Keep moving, baby. Just keep moving.
Okay.
Sandra. Keep moving. Never give up. Just keep moving. You've got to be optimistic. Otherwise, I mean, my joke, my kind of cliche, my sort of trip is, even if you're drowning, Sandra, you've got to stay perky and optimistic, because then you'll see an opportunity. But if you panic and have a panic attack, you miss the opportunities. So there's no choice.
So it's okay for me to tell people what I think instead of holding it
No,
back.
no, you don't leave them alone. Don't tell them what you think. Tell yourself what you think and have confidence in it. It's enough. Okay, it's sometimes helpful to tell other people, but not just because you feel it. Why we have to...
No, you have to toward the workplace. You have to do that in order to make a movement.
It's true, but Sandra, the point is very interesting. The time to talk and say something to others is as if they're ready to hear it. If they're not ready to hear it, it's like talking to a wall. So you've got to have the wisdom to know when to say it and how to say it. That's the wisdom. That's the wisdom. That's the compassion wing. What else, people? Who is there? Amanda.
Amanda?
Yes, sweetheart. I can't see a person. Oh, you're in the audience. I see you're at 16th Street. You look like about a million miles.
Amanda's in Perth, I think.
Oh, are you really, Amanda? Talk to me then, honey. What's this group in Perth then? Hang on a sec. Who's this group in Perth?
It's an acting studio called The Hub. Are you in Perth?
Huh?
Yes, we are.
I'm happy to see you all. Happy to see you all. Talk to me. Someone stopped talking to me. They walked back.
I had a question. I had a question. You spoke before about arrogance being exaggerating the good qualities, and I look at some of the most elite people in various crafts, particularly in sport, and those who aren't necessarily elite, and labeling them as arrogant. So my question was, do you think that there's any kind of positive role that arrogance can play in our lives?
No, you see, if you call it self-confidence, that's a more spacious, appropriate, comfortable way to be. A person who's self-confident is a person who's, as we say in our own words, comfortable in their own skin. That's a good quality. But if it's arrogance, it's necessarily prickly and kind of defensive and kind of unhappy. There's just a way of distinguishing, again, using this fundamental Buddhist way of describing the positive qualities are very comfortable and spacious and interconnected. And the unhappy ones are rigid and brittle and not comfortable. It's a way of saying this. Do you get my point?
Yes, yeah.
You see the difference? Yeah?
I do.
Good.
I do.
Because a person who's arrogant, who's prickly, a
it's-
person who's arrogant and prickly, they're always hungry for other people to praise them. And if they don't get praised, they will collapse into low self-esteem. But a person who's self-confident is comfortable in who they are, they're connected to others, and they're easygoing, and they're also humble. It's a very interesting way to see it. You with me? Huh? Can you hear me?
Oh, yeah, I think I cut out. Yes,
Good. But like I said before,
Yes, yeah. Sorry, I think we cut out.
But like I said before, this distinction in our own mind, it really takes time to see the difference. It takes a lot of inner awareness. It's a gradual thing. You with me?
Yes, yeah.
This is an interesting point. The Tibetans have a lovely thing. They say, if you're feeling low self-esteem, you should tell yourself something that you can do well. And if you're feeling arrogant, you should tell yourself something that you can't do. That's a really nice way to put it. It's very lovely. You kind of adjust, you balance, you know. Who else is there? Kim?
We've got a question from Michael and then Lynn Marie.
Okay, go. What else? Where's Michael?
Hi, Robina.
Hello.
Just a question. You kind of pretty much covered this whole topic, but talking about low self-esteem and, on the contrary, having self-confidence.
Yes.
Kim and I, we actually had an interesting discussion yesterday in an exercise. And her advice to me was, you know, you are enough, you are ample enough, you don't need to be more than what you think you should.
Yes,
but
there you go.
For me, although I do understand it, I don't feel it. I feel like I have to be more than what I am.
Yeah, I understand
so is there something that you maybe
it's just like
there?
it's training. And this is the point I think that we don't get when it comes to our emotions. We know you've got to train to be an actor, you've got to train to ride a bicycle, you've got to train yourself to play music, and you know that you take it one step at a time. But when it comes to emotions, we think we've got to do it instantly, and if it doesn't work, we failed. We're kind of ridiculous. We're a work in progress, honey. So you just simply say the words. Every time you feel yourself lacking, it sounds almost too simple, but it really is true. Buddha is this cognitive therapist, but it goes to very subtle levels. You've got to counteract. The more you hear the rubbish thoughts, I'm not this, I'm not that, you've got to actually dare to question them. And you counteract with a little argument with yourself. You be your own therapist, as one of my teachers put it. It seems very simple, but it is technically simple, but we're not used to doing it, you know. Are you with me?
Yeah, so
Slowly,
for example, just
honey.
as you said,
What?
just as you were saying, so for example, when I think, oh, I'm not enough, then I question myself, well, why don't I think I'm enough?
Or no, not even why. No, bugger why. It's okay, Michael. It's one step at a time. You say to yourself, I'm moving in the right direction. That's what I'm saying. Not why. Bugger why. It's just a habit, that's why. But you just say, no, it's okay, Michael, I'm doing my best. In other words, if you get to grade 1 and you go, oh, I'm only in grade 1, I'll be better when I'm in grade 2. Then you get to grade 2, oh, I'm only in grade 2. Then you get to grade 947, you're still not satisfied. So we've got to learn to know you're going to grade 1000, but be happy in grade 1. And then that causes you to be happy to get to grade 2. So you enjoy the process. You enjoy the progress. You enjoy where you're at. And then you look forward to the next level, and then you enjoy that, and you keep moving. It's an ongoing process, like learning anything. So we're learning to mold our mind into any damn shape we like, one humble step at a time. Are we communicating?
100%.
Good,
Thank you very
honey.
much.
Keep moving.
Lynn Marie.
Thank you, Kim. Hi, Robina.
Hello,
Thank you so
sweetheart.
much. Thank you very much for your time
Good.
and your wisdom today.
Good.
Really, it's a gift.
Good.
My question relates to actions of the past that you know, where you know you've done damage
Yes.
to other people.
Yes.
How can you be both compassionate
Yes.
to yourself?
Yep.
You know, obviously it's in the past.
Yep.
You don't want to just throw it away and say it's in the past.
That's right.
And ignore your acknowledging it and maybe doing something about it.
Exactly.
So how do you navigate the path of damage in the past?
I understand, darling. It's a wonderful question, Lynn Marie. I mean, we Tibetan Buddhists, we have a practice. We call it purification, and as one of our teachers says, we're insane not to do it every day. You do it at the end of the day. It's like cleaning up your act. It's like pulling out the weeds and sorting out your garden. We have to do this, Lynn Marie. We're all human, and if we have some semblance of consciousness as a reasonable person, we've all done dumb things. We've all harmed people. So it's really crucial. But first of all, though, for our own sake, and then to heal it with others. So the process, we call it the 4 R's, and it's a really simple psychological process. So the first step, just remember it as the 4 R's. The first one is called regret, but the usual one we say, when we say regret, oh, I regret having done that. We usually think it's guilt, and we go, oh, I did this and I did that, and then we go, and I'm a bad person, which is why we can't bear to acknowledge the things we've done in the past. We either blame other people, or we become neurotically guilty and kill ourselves, or we live in denial, you know. So this other one is a brave attitude to recognize, well, I did cheat on the boyfriend, and I did badmouth that person, and I did kill the baby. I mean, whatever. I'm talking about me and my view of an abortion, for example. It was a human being as far as I was concerned, but never mind. So you acknowledge that you did that thing, but you know why? The first step, Lynn Marie, and I can't stress this enough, the first step is you acknowledge it because you do not want the suffering from this. You're fed up with the suffering. You see, this is the Buddhist view of karma. It's kind of interesting. It's really just basic psychology. That forget past lives, but basically whatever we think and do and say, it's hardly rocket science, whatever we think and do and say, the first thing that does is program me. So if I'm angry every day and jealous every day and depressed every day and I kill every day and I lie every day, what the hell do you think kind of person I'm producing? A really miserable, unhappy, negative person. It's hardly rocket science. And that's the fundamental view of karma, that we produce ourselves. So the first thing is, and like the analogy would be if you've been eating sugar for too long and you go to the doctor and you're getting diabetes, the first attitude has to be, well, you know, I'm sick of this suffering. I'm fed up with this suffering. You've got to have compassion for yourself. That's what regret is. I did do this and I did do that and I did do this and I have these ridiculous old habits. Not guilt, but I'm fed up with this pain. I'm fed up with this suffering. I don't want to program myself with this rubbish. And so that's where genuinely it is really compassion for yourself. And we're not used to having that. We love to beat ourselves up. That you need to say the words, I regret having done that, Robina, you're talking to yourself, because I am sick of suffering. This is unbelievably important first step. Now the next step is you have compassion for those you've harmed. Now you regret for their sake. You have compassion for the people you badmouthed and harmed and cheated on, or whatever it is you did. And this is a totally personal experience. I mean, it could be your mummy and your mummy's dead, but you do it for your sake. Then you have compassion for the other person, and you think, I must change for their benefit as well, especially if they're living, you know. And if you're brave enough, Lynn Marie, also have compassion for those who've harmed you. That's pretty powerful. And you ask, well, why the hell should I have compassion for people who harm me? Because they're harming themselves by harming you. That's the whole view in Buddhism that we miss in our culture, you know, that we produce ourselves. This is very powerful. Everything I think and do and say is what produces the person I become. But because we're so addicted to believing I'm the product of circumstances and I'm an innocent victim, then everybody else makes me. That's demented. People might do bad things to us. People might do good things to us, but we are the one who produces ourselves. So this first one of regret is owning responsibility and healing. So then the second one is have compassion for those who've harmed you. Then the third step, we do like a different kind of visualization, different kind of meditation. You can do all kinds of things. Even imagining, you know, you use your creative imagination and imagining nectar completely filling you and purifying all this rubbish. Because it's your mind. Your mind. One of my teachers says that purification is, you know, these 4 steps. There's 4 steps: regret, then you've got compassion, it's not quite the 4 R's there, then the remedy, and then the resolve to change. He said what purification is in your own mind, the power of regret, and the power of the compassion, and the power of this little meditation, this remedy, and the power of the resolve to change. We purify our own minds, you know. It's not, we might often do visualizations of the Buddha, but as Buddha's not a creator, we're just using that visualization to heal ourselves. Because it's all mental. It's all mental, you know. We think our negativity is inherent. We think it's intrinsic. It's not. It can be changed. It's very powerful healing. So the third one is you visualize, or we do different trips. The fourth one is you make some decisions. Let's say you badmouth your girlfriend every day. I'm sick of this. So the fourth step is I'm going to change. And with confidence, I won't badmouth for 24 hours. And you're programming your mind into new habits. It's very practical. There's nothing that you can't purify. So, of course, included in that, if the person's still around, there's no harm in asking forgiveness. There's no harm in doing that. But if they don't forgive you, that's okay too, because that's their problem, but you can still heal yourself. Are you with me, Lynn Marie?
Yes, thank you. That's all really helpful,
Good.
Robina. Within that, it all sounds, for me, that all sounds like very individual. How do you know if, do you bounce off someone as far, like, do the Buddhists, talk with each other or practice with each other in regard to seeing if they're on the right track in regards to those 4 steps?
Well,
if
of
you
course,
start that journey on yourself.
Course. We have teachers. Like anything, if you're learning tennis, you need a teacher. And you're learning acting, you need a teacher. So we do have teachers, and you have conversations with your teachers, and you do clarify. Absolutely, there's no question. No doubt. You can do that, but you need to find the people you trust, then you communicate with them. Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yes, good. What else, people?
Ishka?
Hi, Robina, it's me again.
Hello.
Another question.
Yes, sweetheart.
I was wondering when you were talking about how we all seem to be naturally inclined to often believe we have these inherent negative thoughts. And I was wondering, either from your perspective or from the Buddhist perspective, why do you think that is? Why do you think humans tend to believe that these negative thoughts are a part of them? Why do we identify with them?
The answer is so embarrassing, so simple. It's embarrassing because it's a habit. So here, put it this way, okay. I mean, I've got to factor in the bigger picture in Buddhism. I'm just telling you this one, The bigger picture in Buddhism is when our mind is not physical, it's not the brain, it works with the brain, but its consciousness is not physical, it's not the soul, it doesn't use that word, it doesn't come from mummy or daddy, this is a big point, doesn't come from a creator, and doesn't come from nothing. So the Buddhist analysis of the mind, and this is very ancient in the text, is back 3,000 years, consciousness is a continuity of mental moments that go back and back and back and back and back. And if you tracked your mind back in an unbroken chain of mental moments, you're going to get back to the first second of conception. So the second before conception, the egg was in mummy's body, the sperm was in daddy's body, but where's your mind? You track that back to a previous moment of itself, and that in a few weeks before that it was in another body. This is a huge part of the whole Buddhist analysis. So just even taking this into consideration as an explanation, we come into this life, honey, totally programmed from the first second of conception, whether you're a murderer or a meditator, whether you're a genius. I mean, I watch YouTube and see these little 3-year-old children playing Mozart, for God's sake. You can't believe your eyes. It's not mystical. They've obviously got intense familiarity with it. Why you're good at tennis? Because you've done it before. Why you're good at anger? Because you've done it before. Why are you good at jumping on little girls? Because you've got this habit. So we come programmed, the Buddhist view, not with mummies and daddies' tendencies, but with our tendencies. So already we're programmed from day one. So no wonder things are old habits. And the irony of ego is, unless we've done the work, we're going to, the negative thoughts will loom large and we'll believe them. We see them as absolute. It's a habit, honey. Now, equally, you're going to find some people, who come into this life programmed with the goodness because they've done the work. They've done the work on their mind, I mean, there's so many of these people. There's a system in Tibet where they recognize these little children as reincarnated practitioners from the past. And they already come into this life fully programmed with goodness. They've gone beyond ego already. I mean, that's the interesting point in the Buddhist view, the bigger picture point of view, just as a thought. We're programmed with this stuff, You with me? It's just a Buddhist view. I'm not asking you to believe me. I'm just telling you, okay?
Yeah, no, it's fascinating.
Yeah, I know, I understand, yeah. It is fascinating. I think it is, exactly. Go on, people.
I've got a question, but is there anybody else who might have one first? Michael, yes. Here you go. This is Chelsea Robina.
Chelsea, hello, sweetheart.
Hi, thank you. I've really enjoyed this. It's been amazing.
I'm very happy.
I just was wondering, in regards to compassion, on the flip side of any advice you have for, when people might get on your nerves and stuff, just ways to practice, because I don't like it when I feel sometimes
exactly, darling. Well, first of all, I get you, Chelsea. So the first analysis in the wisdom wing is you've got to see what that is, and that's, as you say, get on your nerves. It's a polite word, sweetheart, for anger, but obviously you don't have very strong anger, but you've got mild anger, and it's polite. It's called getting on my nerves. So in other words, your attachment isn't getting what it wants. The attachment in us is this junkie that only wants the nice things. It's a pretty simple analysis, but it's quite profound. So given all that, then the practice is you work on you learn to be patient. Patience, it sounds like a terrible word for us. Patience, I think we mistake it for passive aggression. Kind of patience is kind of gritting your teeth and putting up with this ugly thing. No, that's just repressed anger, I promise. So part of the process is first you notice your own mind someone's getting on your nerves. And if you're able to make it compassion, then you got to just, one approach would be not just to focus on that, because the person's doing something else as well. Or you try to think of where they're coming from. You put themselves in their shoes. If you can do that, then that helps you become more kind, But it's not that easy. You've got to first notice it in your own self. Notice, and and if some person makes us that crazy, then don't put up with it. You've got to get out of the way. Don't blame them, but you can't handle it. So when you can, and if you can afford to reach out to the other person in your mind and realize they're just like you, they're just the same as you. They want to be happy just like you. And so you try to see something different. So that's what practicing patience. Practicing patience is like welcoming the problem, not resisting it. Welcoming that thing. It's not an easy job, but that's one little approach, But another point, in general, if let's say a person is really mean and nasty, the only kind of person who is mean and nasty is a person who's miserable. This doesn't mean they get off the hook. But yourself, if ever you've done anything to harm anybody, even remotely in this life, it's not because you're loving or kind or patient. It's because you're annoyed, upset, irritated, angry, attached, or jealous. So as soon as we're caught up in our own misery, that's when we make ourselves miserable, and that's when we make a mess of other people. So a person can only harm others because they've got their own garbage, And this is not easy to see. It doesn't mean they get off the hook. But that's the logic and explanation. So then you can have some compassion for that person because they're harming themselves. This is one of the fundamental points, When you realise that your own rubbish, like I was saying before about the purification, the first thing is to have this compassion for yourself, for your own harming of others, because you're sick of the suffering. So then you can have compassion, if you're brave enough, for the others who've harmed you because they're harming themselves. That takes time to see, but that's pretty powerful. Just a bit of thoughts there. What do you think?
Yeah, no, that's amazing. Thank
Good,
you so
Chelsea.
much.
Good, darling. But at the same time, it doesn't mean, like if there's some maniac coming to kick the dog because they're a crazy guy, you don't think, they're harming themselves, so I'll have compassion for him and let him kick the dog. No, you be firm and stop him kicking the dog if you can. But have this thought, it's like tough love. Like a good mother will see a child harming themselves, and out of compassion, the mother will have tough love, not pat them on the head. The poor thing can't help it. So compassion is not some wishy-washy thing. It's when it's good compassion, it's rooted in wisdom and clarity. It's got iron and strength and understanding in it. It's not some sentimental rubbish, Do you understand, Chelsea?
Yeah, thank you.
Good, darling. What else?
Oh, yes, here's Wade.
Wade, hello there.
Hello. How do you deal with, I guess, uncertainty, and the uncertainty brings anxiety to you? So this is, for example, my work.
Yes.
I work I have a lot of responsibility when I work, and I might arrive at a construction site with not much prep, and the day beforehand, as soon as finding out the situation that I won't have much prep for it, I start to build anxiety within me.
Yes.
And it's really about overcoming that, because it's rather detrimental.
So, okay, just give me I hear it, but can you be a bit more precise about one scenario? Give an example of a scenario, then I'll hear it very clearly. What's your work? What's this work you're talking about?
So I'm a surveyor, so
Okay, good, all right, good, I've got you now. Go on then.
Yeah, so in the construction industry, for everyone else, I mark where things have to get built, and have to make sure that they're built correctly. And there's a lot of responsibility put onto me.
I hear it.
To make sure things are built right.
So before you go further, you just said that if I get to the building lot the next day without enough prep, well, that means you haven't done your job properly, isn't it?
Well, I'm not given the prep time.
What do you mean by that? Sorry.
So I'm someone who, I myself require a lot of preparation.
Yes.
I do that all the time in my life. And then when I arrive on site, things are very rushed. And
you mean circumstances out there, the architects or the builders or whoever they are, they're rushing it forward.
Yeah, and it's a lot to do with my boss as well.
Okay. Okay, so is it a question then for you? Is it a question then for you being more clear that you cannot do the job if you're not given the time? Is that a possibility? Because, I mean, if people rush you forward at a pace that you can't handle and you're not properly prepped, then that's damn serious. So is it a question of you letting people know that you need more time? Or, I mean, are you seeing my point here? Is that part of the problem? I don't think your problem is that you've got doubt. I think if you've got the right time and you do the prep, you will be confident. But if you're rushed, if you're pushed, you can't, it's not appropriate to be pushed in a job like that. That's damn serious. Are we communicating or not? Am I on the wrong track?
I feel like it's more something to do with me because other people don't require the prep.
No, that's not relevant. No. That's dangerous. Do not go there. Do not go there. That's typical low self-esteem of thinking other people are better. That's not always true. That's not relevant. That's not relevant to you. I mean, you always have this doubt. And even if you do have the right time, do you still feel doubt?
I guess if it's a job that I'm familiar with, then I don't have doubt.
Okay, then that proves my point, honey. Listen, that proves my point. It's not your problem then. You just need time, and that's totally appropriate. It's a serious damn job. If you've done your prep and you've had the right time and you're confident, that proves that it's not your problem in a sense. So then you've got to maybe learn to speed the process up and get the prep time you need as much as you can, and then give your answers. I mean, is it another aspect of it? Are you afraid of are you afraid of upsetting your boss? Are you worried about him not approving of you? Are you worried that you might get the sack? Is that a part of the process? Because that can be very strong.
Yeah, it's a part of the process of, although I've never stuffed up a job, I'm in a constant fear. If I'm in an unfamiliar environment, that although even when I am in unfamiliar environments, I've never stuffed up.
Okay, then maybe that is to do with your own self-doubt. So what can you learn as if you were someone else telling them, let's pretend that someone else is telling you what you're telling me. What's the advice you'd give that person based on what you've just said? What's the advice you'd give them?
I guess if you haven't stuffed up.
Right, precisely.
Yes.
Exactly,
then
honey.
why would you believe
exactly.
you would?
Precisely, honey. There it is. So you've got to train your mind. Be humble. You've got humility. That's clear. But don't let it swing into low self-esteem and fear. You've got to practice that. So you practice doing as well as you can. You tick all the boxes. You do your right job. You don't get pushed. You tell your boss, I'm ready when I'm ready. You be strong and confident. And if you don't ever stuff up, your boss will admire you. And I think it's more you feeling the pressure from other people rather than them pressing you. So just keep moving and have confidence and tell yourself you're doing well and you haven't stuffed up, but you're a human. But do your job properly, tick all the boxes, but give yourself a bit of, a pat on the back, and practice doing that. And notice how you feel you allow other people to pressure you, because that's your fear of being criticized and fear of doing the wrong thing. So you go at your pace. It's sort of like you're driving on the freeway, and this is very common. People are always worried about the car behind them tooting their horn and upsetting. That's the kind of thing you're talking about. The guy behind you. Let him have his own problem. Let him move somewhere else. You do what you have to do, honey, at the pace that's right, with confidence.
Yeah. Thank you.
All right, darling. What else?
I think I saw another hand up. Is there anybody else, Michael? No?
Okay.
Anybody else? Orion, did you have a question?
No, he's okay.
Yep.
Who else?
No, we're fine for the moment.
Okay, good. So what else, hon? What else, Kim?
I have something I was going to ask, but I thought rather than opening up it now, we could maybe begin something, but I think for next week. And that's really what Buddhism talks about when they talk about the self-cherishing I. That absolute sense of this solidly existing sense of self, but I think that's a whole thing for next week.
Okay, good.
But there's just something we were talking that could we do a little, perhaps just a taster of that for our, taking us into next week.
Yeah, I mean, the Buddhist analysis, it's kind of If we look into the neurotic states of mind, an attachment and aversion, or attachment and anger, are the main ones day-to-day life. All the others come from them. And the bottom here, the main one is this emotional hunger, always wanting something more, never satisfied. Always wanting something more, never satisfied. And also it's this junkie-iness that only wants what I want. It only wants the nice things. So the second it doesn't get the nice things, it has a panic attack. And that panic attack is aversion. So that can be volatile, like volatile anger. It can be milder levels of aversion, like irritation, upset, get on my nerves, as Chelsea said. That's all, and that can finally become despair and depression because it all builds up, you know. So we run between this attachment and aversion like 1,000 times a day. So these two are rooted in even a more subtle, more primordial, neurotic, fundamental, wrong, concrete sense of this solid, bereft, separate, concrete me. It's so primordial that we don't really give it a name in modern psychology. You know, it's so subtle. And it's only when we've really done a lot of inner work and we've gone more subtle that we begin to even notice it. It's so ingrained. This is the root of all of them, and this is the root of all the problems. And it's so when that's running the show, which it is, if its main voices are attachment and anger and all the other dramas. So the whole energy of all the unhappy states of mind, they're all expressions of this unhappy sense of a separate me. So that's ego. That's what it means by ego. And that can be manifesting as either you're a dominating, arrogant, harmful, raging maniac, or a totally depressed, sad person. And they're the two extremes of ego. So the irony of ego is it can also, the little sad, quiet person who thinks they're nothing, or the outrageous, dominating, arrogant person who thinks they're everything, you know. They're both symptoms of the same problem. And the problem is this sense of a concrete, separate, lonely, cut off, self-conscious, fear-based. It's fear-based. It's kind of, its taste is fear. Its flavor is fear. So interesting, you know. But maybe we'll just do it, before we finish, just do a couple of minutes little kind of contemplation meditation. Shall we do that? I mean, I forget if we've done it before, but there's a million types of ways. But this meditation is the first kind that Buddha taught. It's very simple. It's actually called concentration. The world calls it mindfulness, but there are sort of 47 varieties of mindfulness now, and that's fine. Buddha doesn't own the copyright on it. But it's really simply a concentration technique. It's psychology. Don't think it is holy, you know. So the first thing is to just get your body in the right position. Over the centuries, all the great meditators have found that the body needs to be in this conducive position that makes it most appropriate and useful to focus the mind. So if we're going to be able to unpack and unravel our mind at a very sophisticated level, we need decent focus. To do anything, you've got to have some focus, you've got to have some concentration. If you can't concentrate for more than a second, you can't achieve anything. So it's a practical thing. So the body, you know, the ideal scenario, you see it in all the pictures and everything, is to be in this so-called full lotus position. But, you know, most of us can't do that, so don't worry about it. And we're all sitting in a chair, let's say. Then keep your body upright. Don't slump into the back of the chair, okay? Hold yourself upright. Because if you've got your eyes closed and you're slumped in the chair, well, you just go to sleep, you know? So this is not a relaxation technique. There are lots of wonderful relaxation techniques. This is a concentration technique. So you've got to learn to be really sharp and alert, you know. Don't space out. It's not spacing out. Okay, so get your body kind of upright. Have your feet firmly planted on the ground. The next one, you can have your hands just resting in your lap. That's okay. But have your body upright. But as soon as you put your body upright and your shoulders kind of square, we then tense the muscles. We always keep our abdomen tense because we don't like looking fat, I think. So just relax your muscles. Flop the muscles. Keep the body upright, but flop the muscles. Just relax your abdomen, okay? Your hands in your lap. Then the main one is your head, slightly tilted forward, chin tucked in a little bit. Just a little bit. And the jaw relaxed. And then oddly enough, I'll just explain why. This is what the yogis have found over the centuries. Excuse me, sniffing. Your lips slightly apart, and then your tip of your tongue resting behind your top teeth, just near the palate. This is hilarious. This is, all the yogis have found when they're meditating for many hours at a time, that it prevents you from dribbling, okay? It's very practical. So have your tongue just resting behind your top teeth, near the palate, lips slightly apart, jaw relaxed, head tilted forward slightly, and then your eyes, have them looking down under your eyelids, lightly closed, and have your eyes looking down as if you're looking along your nose towards the ground. So this is the position, about 8 points. Settle into this position now, very unself-consciously, because your body doesn't meditate, your mind does. So just relax now, settle into this position. Okay, that's the first thing. Now I'll explain what we're going to do exactly. And we're going to do it for 3 quality minutes, okay? So what we're going to do is we're training our mind to concentrate on one thing. Of course, you're not going to be successful. Don't be ridiculous. It's like getting on a bike when you're a little kid. You climb on the left side, you fall off on the right side. So you don't just lie there spacing out. You pick yourself up and put yourself back on the bike until you're able to stay on the bike. Well, here we're going to simply focus on one particular thing. So one of the things that they teach first is you concentrate on the sensation at your nostrils as you breathe in and out. So just take a couple of breaths and locate that sensation. It's a bit different when you go in and out. So just locate the sensation, the general area of the tip of your nostrils when you breathe in and out. Just take a couple of breaths and locate it first. Breathe very naturally, not forced. Okay, so what we're going to do is simply, and don't romanticize this, don't think it's something special, it's simply psychology. We're going to pay attention, like your mother says, pay attention. We're going to pay attention to that sensation. That's the job to be done. The job is not to make the thoughts go away. The job is not to wish the thoughts weren't there. The job is not to engage in the thoughts. The job is not to pay attention to the thoughts. They're all going to come raging as usual, but you just use your will to pay attention simply to that breath. Let the thoughts come and let the thoughts go. That's the job to be done. 3 quality minutes. Just bring your mind back to the breath. Pay attention to the breath. Okay, that's about 3 minutes. 3 quality minutes is much better than 20 minutes spacing out, I promise. So the advantage from this, some people, you might feel nice. Some people just think their mind is getting worse. It doesn't matter, because what you're doing is you're training yourself to stay focused. So then what happens is that as you develop this skill, the main benefit really is you bring to bear this skill of staying focused into your daily life. So what you learn to do is then begin not just to pay attention to the dishes, what the other people are saying, the traffic, but you start to be aware of the crazy thoughts while you're doing other things, and you learn to be able to navigate your thoughts more and more and more skillfully while you're living your life. That's the big benefit that comes from this, I tell you. There's more to it than that, obviously, but that's a really benefit, a great skill. You become more conscious. So you sweetheart people, it's time to go.
It is. Robina, thank you so much for being with us again. We will be seeing you next Thursday at the same time.
Yes.
Thank you very, very much. Should we do a dedication, Robina, do you think?
I'm happy to do that. So it's like 2 bookends for our activity. We did the first one, kind of putting ourselves in the right direction, thinking we're going to listen to this for tools. So now we think at the end, and this is the Buddhist view, nothing goes astray in the mind. Everything's stored in the memory. So we think all these seeds we planted in our mind this last 90 minutes, as many moments as there have been, if you like, is as many seeds we've planted in this programming of our mind. So we think we're going to nourish these seeds from this moment forward with our effort in whatever way we work on ourselves to be a benefit to ourselves, benefit others. Yeah, that's it. So that we delight in what we've just done. So then the second little prayer, I'll sing in Tibetan. The second little prayer is just expressing this amazing aspiration that may compassion for others grow and grow in the hearts of all, Gewadi nududag lama sange drobgyurne drowachi kyang malupa dei sala gurpashok jang chob sem chogrin poche ma ke panam ke gyochig ke panyam pa me payang gong ne gong du pavashok. All right, sweethearts. Thank you so much, everybody.
Thanks, Robina, and thank you for everybody joining us from wherever you've tuned in from. Much love to you all.
Yes.
Thank you, Robina.
See you, sweetheart.
Bye-bye. Thank you.